my YouTube channel. It has been quite a while since I've been on here, and I've been wanting to do this video for a very long time, but I first had to kind of go through the whole emotional process of understanding that my dream of traveling for this year is definitely over, probably won't happen in the next few years. So yeah, now I'm at the point where I can finally make this video, talk about it without getting emotional. And yeah, so today I want to talk about my experience with work and travel, because everyone's experience is really different, and I just wanted to share my experiences, what jobs I ended up doing, and also what places I ended up traveling to. So yeah, let's get right up into it. So the first place I traveled to, you guys probably know, was Sydney. So I didn't go with an organization, and I wouldn't recommend going with an organization just because they take your money, they just make it a little bit easier for you, but everything that they do for you, you can definitely also do very easily on your own. If I managed to do it, you can do it. So yeah, I wouldn't spend the money on an organization because they are quite expensive. So to kind of explain how I organized my own trip, I just basically booked a flight and I applied for the visa. Once I had my visa and my flight, I booked the first month in a hostel just because it was over the holidays like Christmas and New Year's Eve. I thought rather book it before I go because everything will be booked out. I mean, it's Sydney on New Year's Eve. The chance of you finding a hostel for good price is about zero. So if you're planning to go over the holidays like me, then definitely book something before you go there. So I have a few notes on my phone here, so I'll probably be looking at it every now and then. And yeah, I really just want to explain in this video what work and travel is really like. So as I mentioned, I started in Sydney. The start was difficult. I mean, I went there on my own. So I was there not knowing anyone. I didn't know a single soul in Australia. I didn't have a job, and I was just a little bit lost, honestly. And you can definitely see that in those few vlogs I made in Sydney. You can see I'm not in a very happy place, at least in the beginning. It was tough, but I learned so much out of that situation. So yeah, after a while, actually after the first week even, I found my first job. So I went out to the shopping malls and just handed out my CVs. I also always checked online for new job applications, and yeah, just applied for a lot of jobs online and also in person. And the job that I ended up getting was a sales assistant job. It was like a Christmas casual for the fashion brand Alley Fashion. That's like an Australian brand. I've never heard of it before, but I applied in person. So definitely recommend also handing out your CVs, even though if everyone says, oh, you should apply online, just hand them out anyways. Because that's how I ended up getting my first job. So yeah, I worked there for about 2 months, and during those 2 months I also got to know a lot of amazing friends in Sydney that made the time there just so unbelievable. I loved Sydney so much. Sydney is the city I could move to right now and just be happy and live there. Like, it's just the mixture between the huge city, of course, and then also the beautiful beaches that you have there. It's just the perfect combination out of both. I love beaches, I love cities, so like Sydney is the perfect combination for me, and I'd go there again anytime. Yeah, I loved it there, and we went to a lot of clubs. I was partying a lot. That's also why I didn't end up like vlogging much more, because there were just a lot of things going on I didn't really want to share with the internet. And it just got very stressful because I was working so much all the time. I had like weeks of like 35 hours a week, and then vlogging on top of that is just a little bit difficult because you're trying to really relax in the time you have off and to spend that time with your friends and actually do something and see something in Sydney. So yeah, I ended up working there for 2 months, as I said. And after that, I decided to go to Fiji because I was like, okay, I have some money in my bank account now, more than I had before, like the same amount. And I was like, it's time to see something. And Fiji's so close. It's crazy. It would be crazy for me to go there. Like I didn't think I was going to go there this year, honestly. I thought, well, maybe I'd go there, but it was more like just a thought, like a faraway thought. But then I actually looked into bookings, and I looked into flights, and I looked into hostels, and I found a lot of things that I really liked. So I ended up booking it really spontaneously and leaving Sydney 2 weeks after that. So I left Sydney in like the beginning of February. So I was there for December and January, and then in February I went to Fiji, and I just remember crying on the plane. I was literally crying because I didn't want to leave Sydney. That's just how much I loved Sydney. It really became my home, and I was crying on a plane to Fiji vacation because I loved Sydney so much and didn't want to leave. But yeah, so I kind of organized that Fiji trip on myself. I would not recommend doing that just because there were like a few things I didn't know about that I would have liked to see, that I would have liked to do, and it's just better if you don't know anything about the location. Like I didn't know anything about Fiji. It's just better to go with a traveling agency because they can definitely help you find better prices for the ferries. For example, I ended up spending so much money on ferries there, and I could have saved so much more and seen so much more if I would have gone to a travel agency. So for Fiji, I definitely recommend booking over a travel agency, or at least talking to one so you know what the good deals are and where you can get them. I got to Fiji, everything went as planned. So the first night I stayed in a hostel on the main island, Nadi, and then I went on a ferry the next day to Kauai Island, which is the most beautiful place I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, it's unreal. I'll put some pictures while I'm talking about these places left or right of me, so you get a little bit of a better view of what the place looked like. Honestly, this was the best vacation of my life. Like, I went by myself, but it was really amazing. So yeah, we kind of got to the island, from the ferry to the island, with this little tiny boat, and like all the suitcases were on top. I was just scared the suitcases were gonna drown all the time. But yeah, so we snorkeled there a lot, and they had this special thing about the island was that you could go scuba diving with bull sharks, which was crazy because I've never been scuba diving before, and usually to go like in 12-meter depth you definitely need like a license or something. Like you would have to have some experience with scuba diving, but I didn't at all. So yeah, that in 12-meter depth without any experience. And then let's add the bull sharks, which are huge. Yeah, I think Fiji is one of the only places you can do that at, just because Fiji, they don't really care too much about like security measures, which I don't mind. If you don't mind, then that's the place for you to go. So yeah, I did the bull shark diving. It was one of the craziest experiences of my life. I must say, I'm not afraid of sharks at all, so for me this wasn't like scary or anything. The only scary thing was that I was afraid not to be able to breathe through the oxygen tank, because I've never done that before, and that really freaked me out that you can't just breathe. But yeah, it all worked out fine, and I borrowed a GoPro so I could film some things, and yeah, it was an amazing experience. And I also went snorkeling with like small tiny sharks, and yeah, I ended up spending 6 nights I think there, which was way too long. You usually only spend like 2 to 3 nights on one island, but I didn't know that, of course, because I booked it on myself. But yeah, that's why you should definitely go to a travel agency and book it there. So yeah, I spent 6 nights there. I loved it, and then I went back to the main island, Nadi, and I was planning on staying there actually, but Nadi's just not as nice. Like, the beaches there are not as nice. It's like a very big difference compared to the islands. There's Sava Islands, for example, and then Nadi, the beaches, like, it's just not the same. So I ended up booking another trip to what was the island called? Beachcomber Island. Yeah, Beachcomber Island is this small, tiny island. I could run around this island within 10 minutes. That is crazy. Like, it was so small, and it looked like out of a postcard. It was just white sand, blue water, blue sky, green palm trees, amazing, honestly. The most beautiful island next to Kauai. Wow, I was blown away. So there, well, on all these islands I met really nice people, so I was never alone. I always was hanging out with other girls. And on that island I actually ended up getting 80 mosquito bites one night, which was horrible. I woke up the next morning and I couldn't do anything that day because it was just itching so bad. I just wanted to, I don't know, take some medicine, but you were like in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the ocean on this tiny island. Like they only have what they have. And yeah, eventually it stopped itching the next day, but that one day was the worst day ever. Like I couldn't do anything. I just sat in the water all day, and when I went into the sun it just started burning even more, the bites. So yeah, that was pretty not that nice. And then yeah, after I stayed there for about 2 or 3 nights, and then I went back to Nadi again. And then from Nadi I decided to go on a Valentine's trip with a few friends, and we ended up going to Cloud 9, which is this floating bar in the middle of the ocean. Crazy, I know. And it was the most Instagrammable, most beautiful, most epic place I've ever seen or been. Amazing, honestly. Food there was great too. 10 out of 10 recommend to go there. It's a little expensive, but it's totally worth it. Like, when are you gonna go on a floating bar in the middle of the ocean in Fiji ever again? Never. So if you're there, use your opportunity. So yeah, I went there and I loved it. It was amazing. And then after that I only had like a few more days in Fiji, so I ended up going to a temple. I don't quite remember what the temple was called. And then I flew back to Brisbane. So I didn't want to go back to Sydney because I wanted to experience the different cities in Australia. So I went to Brisbane, and I actually got transferred there from my old job, Alley Fashion, but that didn't quite work out the way I expected it to. So when I got there I only got 1 shift within those like next 2 weeks. That was like 5 hours, and I'm just over here like, how am I gonna pay for rent and food with a 5-hour shift? Like, it's not adding up. Like, it's not gonna happen. So yeah, that was pretty annoying, but I didn't end up liking Brisbane at all anyways, because you have to know that Brisbane doesn't have a beach, which is like a big minus point. If I live in Australia, I want to live somewhere close to a beach, and that was not the case in Brisbane. The next beach that I went to, well, I went to Surfers Paradise like 1 or 2 nights into living in Brisbane, but I also had a little bit of trouble finding friends there. I first didn't really connect with the people there, but then after a while I met this amazing friend who's actually still in Australia, and yeah, so that worked out fine. But the whole job situation just didn't. I applied for a lot of jobs and I didn't end up getting any job there, and I didn't like the city. There was just not much going on. It was like a very dead city to me. It was just dead. Like, there weren't many people, there weren't many events, there was just not a lot going on. It was just pretty boring, honestly, and a very small city compared to Sydney. I remember when I drove there with a cab from the airport, I remember thinking to myself, okay, this is the skyline, like, where's the rest of the city? Because it looked so small compared to Sydney. Yeah, so that was not my cup of tea. Didn't like Brisbane, wouldn't go there ever again. It's just, the one thing that was good there was the Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary. So if you're thinking about taking nice pictures with koalas, being able to pet them, or also feeding the kangaroos, then definitely go there. That was a great experience. But other than that, yeah, things that you can do in Brisbane also was the free ferry. You could watch like the sun go down on that ferry, which was great because it's also free. But other than that, the shopping really sucks in Brisbane. And I don't know, it was just not my city. I didn't like it. So I left after those 2 weeks because I already had 2 weeks booked in my hostel, and I really regretted that because I wanted to leave earlier, but I had to stay there for 2 weeks until my hostel wasn't booked anymore. So yeah, after that I flew to Melbourne because friends of mine that I met in Sydney that I spent a lot of time there with. I spent Christmas and New Year's Eve with them. They were also in Melbourne at that point, so I decided to fly to Melbourne and meet those guys and just have a nice time with them and get to know the city Melbourne, because that was also on my list. And so yeah, I decided to fly to Melbourne, and I just remember the same day I landed in Melbourne, I went partying on the same night. So I landed like maybe at, I don't know, 5 p.m. I got to my hostel, put my makeup on, put an outfit on, and went to my friend's apartment and we went out, which was amazing because that's exactly what I needed at that point. And I just remember they had the best apartment ever. Like, the view and the location, it was directly in front of the Melbourne Central Station, like directly in front of it. I just remember like getting a little bit tipsy on the balcony. It was just the best time ever. I miss it so much, and yeah, it was just a really good time. So yeah, I ended up really liking Melbourne, and I wanted to find my own apartment because at this point I've been living in hostels for almost 4 months now. I was just sick and done with it. I just wanted my own apartment. I don't even know how I managed to stay and sleep in hostels for 4 months. Like, that's a very long time to share your room and your bathroom every single day. And after a while it just gets on your nerves, so I really wanted my own apartment, but it was so difficult to find something in Melbourne because everything was so expensive. And at the same time I also still didn't have a new job and I was looking for one. And yeah, so I didn't end up finding one at that point, just because it was also like, that was already March when the whole coronavirus thing was slowly starting, but it didn't hit Australia until a little bit later. So it hit Europe definitely first, and then it came to Australia. So at that point I knew coronavirus was going on, but I didn't know it was going to get this big, and I didn't know that it was going to come to Australia as well. So I booked another trip because I wasn't really going anywhere in Melbourne. Like, I saw the main things I wanted to see, and I was thinking about actually slowly going home because I just kind of got a little bit sick of traveling by myself, always having to meet new people and always having to stay in hostels because apartments by yourself are just too expensive, or even rooms in apartments are too expensive, and just doing like low paid jobs all the time. And it was just starting to get on my nerves a bit, and I was like, well, I'll just visit the few places that I wanted to see and then I'll go home. So I booked a trip up the East Coast. I went by bus, by the Greyhound bus. You probably know that bus if you've been in Australia. That's like this bus line that you can travel to all the touristy places with. So I booked that bus and I went from Melbourne. It was supposed to go from Melbourne all the way up to Cairns, my trip. And I had an overnight bus from Melbourne to Sydney. And I actually got really sick on that trip from Melbourne to Sydney because the air conditioning in the bus was so strong. I was freezing the whole time, and it was like a 12-hour bus drive or something, I don't know. It was overnight, I didn't sleep at all, and I was just freezing, and I ended up having a cold for 3 months after that because of this air conditioning. Yeah. So I ended up arriving in Sydney. It was really nice to see everything again, but it just wasn't the same anymore, of course, because the people weren't there anymore either that I was hanging out with when I was living in Sydney. So then I went further up to Byron Bay, and Byron Bay is one of the best places in Australia to go. So if you're going to Australia, definitely go to Byron Bay. It's just such a laid-back, nice, relaxing vibe there. Like, it's the typical surfer hotspot, typical surfer little town that you would imagine, and it's gorgeous. Like, it's beautiful. I don't have any words for it. I'd go there anytime again too. It's an amazing place. And after that I headed it further up to I think Surfer's Paradise it was. Yeah, I've been to Surfer's Paradise once already. As I mentioned, when I was in Brisbane, didn't like it that much at that time. And then the second time I went to Surfer's Paradise was on this East Coast trip. I didn't like it there either because I was really sick, as I mentioned, from the air conditioning in the bus. And I did not like it that time either. I don't know, Surfer's Paradise is just not for me. I think it's really overrated. The buildings are really tall. They kind of take away the sunlight on the beach. And the waves are really strong. The water was really dirty. Like, it's just not my place. I didn't like it. Wouldn't recommend it either. I mean, it's nice to have seen it once, but don't spend there more than a day because it's just not that great. After that, I went further up with the bus to Noosa Heads, and Noosa Heads was beautiful. The scenery was gorgeous, the nature was amazing, and I went to the fairy pools there, and that was a really nice experience too. But I definitely recommend going there very early because it is a place that will get very crowded by like noon or afternoon. So yeah, definitely go there early, especially if you want to take some good Instagram pictures, because otherwise you're gonna end up with a ton of people in your picture. So yeah, I went to Noosa Heads, and that was the time and place where the whole coronavirus escalated. Also in Australia, they were announcing that they're going to shut all the borders down, and by that time I actually had decided that I wanted to stay in Australia longer and I don't want to go home after my East Coast trip. So I searched for a host family because I thought to myself, well, I could try out being an au pair for a family over Facebook, and I got really lucky. I found one that lived in Melbourne and also in a really like central place of Melbourne, part of Melbourne. So that was amazing. They had 3 children. They were like from the age of, the smallest one was 18 months, and then the middle one was 3 years, and the eldest was 5 years. And I looked after those children for about, I think, only 1 or 2 months, so not very long, because the family ended up not really working out for me. So I looked for another family also on Facebook, and I found them within 24 hours like the other one. So that was really easy to find families across Facebook. And that family ended up working out actually quite well for me. There were 3 children again. They were a little bit older, so they were from the age of 7, 9, and 5 was the youngest. And I really liked that family. They were amazing. But yeah, I was in quarantine like most of the time that I was an au pair. So I started being an au pair in like, I think, beginning of April or end of March until the end of July, beginning of August. So I think that was about like 5 to 6 months or something like that. And yeah, in the second family I ended up staying the longest, and I did enjoy it. I will definitely make a separate video about being an au pair and my experience as an au pair. In Australia, we had our first quarantine for like 2 months. I think that went from April to May, almost June, I think, and then we had like a 6-week break where things got better and we didn't have a lot of cases anymore, and stores started opening again and restaurants did too. So during that time I was really lucky because I met this amazing friend group. Well, we all became an amazing friend group. We were all au pairs from Germany, and it was just a perfect match. We were 5 girls and we were hanging out together all the time, and I really love and miss them, but they're all still in Australia actually. I'm the only one, I think, of us 5 that actually went home already. And yeah, we ended up just becoming really close friends at that time. And after those 6 weeks though, there was a second quarantine, and I was like, the first quarantine was already very challenging and difficult for me, just because you have to remember I was there with a family that wasn't my own, and I was working all the time, and you're with children all the time, which is nice, but during the weekend you just really need a break of the children and actually be able to follow your own interests. But that's just not possible if you're in the family, because you kind of also want and have to spend time with them on the weekends, especially if you can't go anywhere else. And it's just very hard to actually have a break of the whole thing if you're kind of in quarantine with them. So that was very tough for me. And in the first lockdown already, and then the second lockdown came around, and that one was also even stricter. You had to wear masks outside every day. Even if you were just walking by yourself in the woods, you would have to wear a mask. So it was not just like in stores or in public places, but everywhere. And you weren't allowed to go out, I think, like at after 10 p.m. or something until 6 a.m. the next morning. So it was also restricted on the times that you were allowed to leave your house. So, okay, the second lockdown is coming around. I think I I waited another month or so in the second lockdown, but like a month into the second lockdown they said it was going to be 6 weeks the second lockdown, but numbers were just not like going down after those first 4 weeks, so they of course extended the lockdown, and I knew this was going to happen. And I just thought in my head, okay, if this lockdown ends up going longer than those 6 weeks they were initially talking about, then I'm just not gonna go through with it. Yeah, I ended up flying home on, I think, the 1st of August. I think it was the 1st of August. And honestly, for me, it was the best decision. So for me, this was the best decision just because I was not happy anymore with how things were going, and I knew I was not going to be able to get out of Melbourne for a while. And yeah, that was my experience with work and travel. So I'd say I definitely recommend doing work and travel if you really want to see what it's like to live in Australia. But if you're just looking for a nice travel experience, you just want to travel, then I wouldn't recommend work and travel just because you'll end up working way more than you think. So I ended up working 8 months of the 9 months that I was there. That's kind of bothering me in the end because I just worked so much, but I still ended up spending all my money somehow. So yeah, if you're just looking for traveling, then definitely just go with the travel visa and only get the work and travel visa if you really want to see what it's like to live there. So thank you guys so much for watching. Follow me on Instagram if you're not doing so yet. This is my Instagram right here. And also subscribe to my channel if you want to see some more content about traveling. And I think I'm going to do some vlogs. I'm definitely going to start doing more videos now. So if you don't want to miss out, hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this video, give this video a thumb up, and we'll see each other next time. Bye guys!